Everyone thought the boy was just shy, until he gave a barely visible signal to a therapy dog, and the dog's reaction revealed a truth the court had completely missed. You could sit in a room with Javon Merrick for hours and still not know if he liked you. Not because he was rude, he just didn't talk. 12 years old, skinny, dark-skinned, always pulling at the sleeves of his hoodie, like they were hiding him from the world. When he walked into the courtroom in Toledo, Ohio that morning, he barely made eye contact with anyone. He didn't cry. He didn't smile. He didn't even blink much. The court officer tried to give him a soft pat on the back as he guided him to the table, but Javon didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't lean in, just sat. Across the room, his foster parents sat stiff in their chairs, Gerald and Lynette Bosley, late 40s, from the outside, the perfect couple. Churchgoers. Owned a daycare. No criminal history. On paper, they looked ideal. But today wasn't about what was on paper. Today was about what couldn't be written down. The courtroom had a chill that didn't come from the air conditioning. The kind of chill you get when nobody's sure if they're the good guy or the villain. Javon was the only child of Marquita Merrick, a woman who died during a failed surgical procedure 2 years earlier. No father listed on his birth certificate. Since then, he'd been passed around. 3 homes in 14 months. The Bosleys were his latest placement, and something about them didn't sit right with his school counselor. There hadn't been bruises, no hospital visits, but there were notes. Teachers saying Javon flinched when spoken to, barely ate at lunch, stared out the window too long. Nothing that screamed danger, just odd patterns. Still, CPS didn't have enough to remove him. Until now. Judge Russell Cranmore watched the boy like a man trying to see through a fogged-up window. He was in his 60s, known for his impatience with grandstanding lawyers and courtroom theatrics. But Javon wasn't putting on a show. He was sitting next to his court-appointed guardian, eyes locked on his own fingers. The prosecutor leaned in. "Javon, do you remember what happened last month at home? You can tell us anything you want." No response, not even a headshake. "Do you feel safe with the Bosleys?" Still nothing. "Javon, he's not ignoring you," said the guardian softly. "He just doesn't speak unless he has to." Judge Cranmore rubbed his forehead. "Doesn't speak or won't? He speaks, sometimes, but he's shut down lately." The judge sighed. "We're not going to get far like this." That's when someone opened the side door, and a woman with a beige vest entered, holding a leash. A large golden retriever padded beside her. Calm, ears perked, tail swaying gently. "This is Oscar," the handler said. "We thought he might help ease Javon's anxiety. He's a licensed therapy animal." No objections, just quiet agreement. The woman led Oscar to Javon's table, clipped his leash to a small loop by her belt, and sat down a few feet away. Oscar did what he was trained to do, lay calmly, breathing in the room. Javon didn't smile, but he did move. Barely. His left pinky flicked once, then again. Then, with the most subtle gesture, he twitched his wrist and tapped his thumb twice against his thigh. Oscar's head popped up. His ears perked in a different way. His gaze locked on the boy. And for the first time that morning, Javon's eyes moved, not to the judge, not to the lawyers, just to the dog. Judge Cranmore caught it. So did the prosecutor. "What was that?" the judge asked. The handler looked confused. "What was what?" "Did the boy signal him?" The handler looked at Javon, then the dog. Oscar was sitting upright now, tail flat, chest still, like he was waiting. She hesitated. "That wasn't one of our standard signals, but he did respond." But something in the dog's posture told the room this wasn't going to be just another silence. Oscar didn't bark, didn't growl, but he didn't relax either. He stayed upright, focused, like he'd just been told something only he could hear. Javon didn't flinch. He didn't shift in his seat or glance around for attention. It wasn't some cry for help performed on cue. He just kept his eyes on the dog, hands folded neatly in his lap. Calm. too calm for a kid in a courtroom. The handler tilted her head slightly, watching Oscar's behavior with growing concern. "He's alerting," she muttered, almost to herself. "Alerting to what?" the judge asked. "I don't know yet," she replied, stepping a little closer to the boy and the dog. Oscar inched forward, slowly, like he wasn't sure whether he was allowed. His nose brushed against Javon's knee. The boy didn't move, but his thumb tapped again. A second time, then a pause, then one final tap. Oscar laid down flat on the floor, but not in a relaxed way. He stayed stiff, eyes open, pressed up tight against the boy's leg. The room had gone quiet. The prosecutor raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" The handler exhaled. "Oscar's trained to detect signs of trauma. He was originally used with veterans. Those taps, the ones the boy made, those weren't random. That's not fidgeting. It's a learned signal." "You mean the boy trained him?" the prosecutor asked. "I don't know," she said carefully. "But Oscar's responding like he recognizes it, and dogs don't fake this kind of response." Javon still hadn't said a word, but the courtroom was hanging on everything he wasn't saying. Gerald Bosley shifted in his seat, visibly uncomfortable. Lynette glanced at him, her face tight. No one else was watching them. All eyes were on the boy and the dog. The judge leaned forward. "Javon, where did you learn that signal?" The boy's lips parted just slightly. "My grandfather," he whispered, the words barely there. The judge raised a hand. "Could you say that again?" Javon repeated, a bit louder this time. "My grandfather taught me." The guardian beside him leaned closer. "When did he teach you that?" "Before he died, when I stayed with him." "You trained dogs with him?" the handler asked gently. Javon nodded. "And what does that signal mean, the one you just gave Oscar?" He looked at the dog. "That I need help. But I can't say why." Nobody spoke for a beat. Then Oscar stood up again. And this time, he walked across the courtroom, toward Gerald Bosley. Slow, cautious. Lynette reached to pull her husband's arm, but Gerald was frozen. Oscar stopped a foot away. He growled. Low, constant, focused. The handler's mouth dropped slightly open. "He's reacting to something specific." Gerald raised both palms. "This is ridiculous. That dog's just agitated. He's never done that before," the handler cut in. "Ever. He only growls when he feels something is off. That's a trained alert. I've worked with him 3 years. Judge Cranmore narrowed his eyes. "Mr. Bosley, have you ever had an encounter with this dog before?" "Of course not." "Javon," the prosecutor said carefully. "Why do you think Oscar's reacting to him?" The boy didn't answer, but his hands moved again. Subtle finger motions. Different this time. The handler crouched beside the dog. "He's giving him another signal," she whispered. "He's testing if Oscar remembers the full sequence." "Sequence?" the judge asked. "He's trained. This isn't a fluke. This kid's not just calling for help. He's using operational commands, something that takes months to teach. And Oscar's responding." Oscar stepped forward again. And this time, Gerald stood up. "I'm not going to sit here while a mutt stares me down like I'm a criminal." "You might want to sit down, Mr. Bosley," the judge warned. "This court is not finished." But what happened next made everyone realize the boy's silence had never been the problem. It was what his silence had been protecting. Judge Cranmore wasn't a man easily shaken. In 30 years on the bench, he'd seen everything, from gang trials to custody wars that tore families apart. But this? A boy barely speaking, a dog reacting to silent signals, and a foster father fidgeting like he had something to hide. This was different. He looked over the top of his glasses at Gerald Bosley. "You're not under investigation yet, Mr. Bosley, but I'd suggest you stop talking unless spoken to." Gerald clenched his jaw and dropped back into his chair. Javon sat with his arms crossed tightly now, his fingers twitching subtly under the table. The courtroom wasn't loud, but the silence had a pressure to it, like everyone was afraid the next breath might break something important. The prosecutor stepped forward. "Javon, can you show us the full sequence you used with Oscar?" The boy didn't answer at first. He stared at the floor, blinked once, then looked to the judge. "Am I going to get moved again?" he asked quietly. The judge leaned forward. "Moved where?" "To another house. Somewhere worse. You're safe here, son," Cranmore replied. "Just tell the truth." Javon hesitated, then gave a small nod. He extended his right hand under the table and started tapping. 3 quick pulses with his fingers, a pause, then 2 soft brushes of his palm against his thigh. Oscar immediately stepped closer to the Bosleys, but he didn't bark. He sat. Then he lowered his head and placed his paw forward, a move trained specifically to signal discomfort or danger near a person. The handler turned pale. "That's a high-level alert. That means Oscar believes this man is a threat. It's rare. We don't teach that lightly." The courtroom broke into murmurs. Lynette Bosley whispered something into Gerald's ear, but he just shook his head, tight-lipped and red-faced. Judge Cranmore raised a hand to silence the room. Then he turned to the clerk. "Is the school counselor present today?" A woman stood at the back, mid-40s, pressed grey skirt, holding a file close to her chest. "Yes, Your Honor. I'm Denise Hadley, Liberty Middle School." "Ms. Hadley, have you noticed any behavior from Javon that might support what we're seeing here?" Denise nodded and stepped forward. "Yes. Javon rarely speaks at school, but he's observant, hyper-aware. A few weeks ago, during lunch, a tray dropped behind him and he dropped to the ground instantly. No hesitation, like a reflex. We thought it might be PTSD. Did he ever talk to anyone about what happened at home?" "No, but he did draw." "Draw?" Denise opened her file and produced 3 sheets of paper, each with a childish sketch in pencil. One showed a boy in a corner, another had a man with angry lines for eyebrows. The third was a dog, not a cartoon. Detailed, accurate, wearing a vest. "That's Oscar," the handler whispered, startled. "That's my dog." The judge turned to Javon. "When did you draw these?" Javon shrugged. "Couple weeks ago. Did anyone help you with them?" "No." "Did you draw Oscar from memory?" Javon gave a single nod. "He trained at my grandpa's place." The handler blinked. "What's your grandfather's name?" "Wilbur Merrick." Her eyes widened. "I knew Wilbur. He ran a canine trauma response program in Fremont. We trained there twice a year. That man saved lives." The judge's expression changed. This boy wasn't just reacting. He had been part of something bigger before everything fell apart. And suddenly, the silence made sense. He wasn't scared to speak. He just trusted different methods, safer ones. But the most damning part wasn't the dog or the drawings. It was the fear behind Javon's calm, and the fact that no one had asked the right questions until now. The silence broke when Judge Cranmore stood up. Not just a lean or a shift, but fully stood, his robe swaying slightly as he stepped down from the bench. He didn't say anything at first, just walked slowly toward the handler, the dog, and the boy. No one stopped him, no one breathed. He crouched down beside Oscar. The dog didn't flinch, still locked in that half-guarded stance, tail flat, eyes sharp, not scared, not confused. Ready. The way trained dogs are when they're protecting something that matters. "Javon," the judge said, voice low. "Has Oscar ever reacted to Mr. Bosley before?" "I only saw him once," Javon said, barely audible. "When was that?" 3 months ago, when he came with the therapy lady to our house. That was news." The handler turned. "Oscar's never been placed with the Bosleys. That wasn't part of the program." Javon looked at her, then down at Oscar. "I heard Gerald yelling. The door was open. Oscar looked at him, then walked away and sat by the fridge. Just sat there. Wouldn't move. That's how I knew he remembered." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Are you telling me Oscar was reacting to him the same way before today?" Javon nodded once. "Why didn't you say anything then?" His voice dropped lower. "Didn't think it would matter." Gerald slammed his hand on the table. "This is absurd. You're letting a child and a mutt destroy our name." Cranmore stood up slowly and stared directly at him. "You're one outburst away from contempt. Sit down, Mr. Bosley." Gerald backed down, but his face burned red. The handler stepped closer. Your Honor, if I may. Dogs like Oscar don't just respond to behavior. They pick up on tone, body tension, scent changes. He's reacting to something real. Could he be reacting to fear? Cranmore asked. Yes, she said. But not just general fear. Targeted fear. He knows it's coming from that direction, she pointed at Gerald, and not from anyone else in the room. The prosecutor turned to Javon. Did Gerald ever touch you? A pause. Then, softly, not where people could see. Lynette Bosley stood up, panicked. He's lying! That boy has always hated us. He's difficult, withdrawn, impossible to deal with. You're just going to take his word? No, the judge interrupted. We're going to take the word of a child who uses trained service commands to communicate because adults failed him too many times to count. He motioned to the bailiff. Escort Mrs. Bosley outside until I say otherwise. Lynette began to argue, but the bailiff moved quickly, and she stopped. With a heavy huff, she grabbed her bag and stormed out. Cranmore returned to his bench. We're taking a short recess. Bailiff, keep Mr. Bosley here. The rest may step out. But Javon didn't move. Neither did Oscar. The handler crouched beside him. You okay? The boy looked down. I think he remembers more than I do. She smiled gently. He remembers because you trained him, and because you needed him to. When the room cleared, the judge requested both the guardian and the handler to remain. He pulled up a chair in front of Javon, leaned in, and said something no one else heard. The guardian's expression shifted from neutral to stunned. She leaned toward the handler. He just told the judge he used to sleep with Oscar when his grandfather got sick. That Oscar was the only one who knew what the yelling meant. The only one who could tell if it was safe to walk into the kitchen. Yelling from who? The handler asked. Javon looked up. My uncle, Gerald. The room froze again, even with only 3 people inside. But now it wasn't just about protecting a child. It was about unraveling how someone like Gerald ever became a foster parent in the first place. It wasn't listed in any file. No caseworker flagged it. No judge, until now, had made the connection. But once Javon said it, my uncle, Gerald, it reframed everything. Gerald Bosley wasn't just some foster dad. He was family. Distant, yes, but blood. The type of connection that slips through the cracks when paperwork gets rushed and files don't talk to each other. The guardian's voice was tight. How long have you known Gerald was your uncle? Javon shrugged. Since I got there. First night. He said, your mama never gave me no respect, now I got you. The judge's eyes stayed on the boy. Did you tell anyone that? You think they'd believe me? Javon asked, dead serious. They didn't believe her when she called him out. Cranmore leaned back slowly in his chair. The handler looked from the judge to the guardian. We need to pull Oscar's training records. If Javon helped train him at his grandfather's, those sessions would be logged. It'll back up everything. The judge nodded. Do it. Today. Javon was still seated, still calm, but the energy around him had shifted. Not nervous, just relieved that someone had finally said what he wasn't allowed to. Gerald used to lock me out back, Javon said softly, more to himself than anyone. Winter, summer, didn't matter. Said boys needed to be hardened. Said crying was for girls. Did Lynette know? The guardian asked. She'd just turned the TV up louder. Said she didn't hear anything. The handler bit her lip. He was signaling Oscar with all of this. That's how he kept himself safe. The judge looked down at the file in front of him. You said your grandfather taught you how to train dogs. Was it just Oscar? No, Javon said. All kinds. PTSD dogs, therapy dogs, scent detection. How old were you when you started? 7? And you remember all the commands? Javon nodded. They're like songs in my head. Judge Cranmore paused. Can you show me one more? The boy looked over at Oscar, who was watching him closely. Javon tapped twice, rubbed his palm along his knee, then pointed under the table. Oscar responded instantly, crawling beneath and curling at the boy's feet, resting his head on Javon's shoes. "What did you just ask him to do?" the judge asked. "Guard me." A silence fell again, this time different, heavy with truth. "Javon," the guardian said gently, "do you know why Gerald never wanted you talking to people?" The boy gave the smallest nod. "Because if I did, people would ask questions." "Did you ever try?" Javon looked up for the first time. "I stopped when no one listened." Judge Cranmore tapped a pen on his pad, then looked to the handler. "How many dogs like Oscar are in the state program?" "Less than 50, she replied. "They're hard to train, and the ones trained by Wilbur, Javon's grandfather, are considered elite." He sighed. "That explains the level of discipline I'm seeing." Oscar hadn't moved once from under the table. He remained still, protective, as if he knew this moment had been waiting to surface. The judge turned toward the door. "Bailiff, bring Mr. Bosley back in." A moment later, Gerald walked in, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. Cranmore didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Mr. Bosley, were you ever present during Wilbur Merrick's training sessions?" Gerald scoffed. "Long time ago, before he cut me off." "Why did he cut you off?" "That old man had opinions. Always favored his daughter. Never thought I'd be good enough for anything." "Did you ask to foster Javon, or were you selected?" Gerald blinked. "Does it matter?" The judge folded his hands. "It does when it looks like you manipulated the system to gain access to a child you were never fit to raise." But the next decision wouldn't be made in anger. It would be made by a judge who had finally heard the truth in a language most people never bothered to learn. The air shifted again when the judge leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Mr. Bosley, based on the evidence presented, your relationship to the minor, and your past involvement with the Merrick family, I'm authorizing an emergency review of your foster certification, effective immediately." Gerald's eyes widened. "You can't just—" "I can," the judge cut in. "And I just did." Oscar growled low, not loud, but enough to quiet the room. Gerald took an instinctive step back. For the first time since the hearing began, he looked less angry and more exposed. "I suggest you don't test that dog," the handler said coldly, stepping slightly in front of Oscar. 2 officers approached Gerald from behind, one placing a hand on his shoulder. "You'll need to come with us while we file the motion, sir." Gerald didn't fight, but he didn't go quietly. "This is garbage. That boy doesn't talk for months, and now suddenly he's your golden witness?" "He doesn't need to talk," Judge Cranmore replied. "He communicated more clearly than any adult in this room." The door closed behind Gerald, and for the first time, Javon's breathing changed. His shoulders dropped. Not in defeat, in release. Like he had been holding something in for months and finally realized it didn't belong to him anymore. The judge turned toward Javon again. "Son, I'm going to ask you something serious. You don't have to answer unless you want to." Javon looked up. "Do you feel safe staying with anyone who knew Gerald?" "No." "Would you prefer a temporary placement with someone familiar to your grandfather's network? Maybe someone who works with dogs?" The boy gave a single nod. Not eager, just honest. The handler turned to the judge. "I know someone. Trained under Wilbur for 6 years. No children of her own, but she's certified and licensed for trauma care. I'll call her today." Cranmore scribbled something in his notes. "Make the arrangements. I'll approve it before sunset." The guardian placed a hand lightly on Javon's shoulder. "That sound okay with you?" Javon glanced down at Oscar. The dog's tail gave a small thump on the floor. "Yeah," he said. "Okay." Just outside the courtroom, a small crowd had gathered. Law clerks, legal assistants, 2 off-duty officers waiting on other cases. Word had started to spread. Not gossip, not drama. Just quiet respect for a boy who didn't say much, but said everything anyway. Inside, Judge Cranmore took a deep breath. He wasn't one for speeches, but he paused, looked around the half-empty room, and said something he hadn't written down. "I've been on this bench a long time, long enough to know the law doesn't always come with clarity. But today, this courtroom didn't need 1,000 words or a long testimony. It just needed someone to listen." The handler blinked back tears. The guardian nodded silently. The judge turned to the clerk. "Let's adjourn for today. but I want this transcript reviewed by every family court judge in Lucas County. No redactions." Oscar stood up slowly and placed his paw gently on Javon's foot one last time before turning toward the exit. Javon stood with him. No handcuffs, no yelling, no screaming scenes like on TV, just a slow, careful walk to the hallway where something different, better, was finally waiting for him. As they exited, a younger intern, sitting near the back, whispered to the clerk beside her, "What just happened?" And the clerk, without looking away from the door, replied, "A child spoke in the only language he knew, and someone finally listened." But the real ending hadn't come yet, because the lesson this courtroom learned was just the beginning of what needed to change outside those walls. Javon didn't speak much the next few days. He didn't have to. The woman who took him in, Ramona Ellis, an ex-military canine handler from Perrysburg, knew better than to push. She gave him his own room, stocked the fridge with what little she knew kids liked, and laid out an extra bed for Oscar, who hadn't left Javon's side since they walked out of that courtroom. They didn't talk much the first night. Ramona simply handed him a folded blanket, said, "Bathroom's down the hall," and turned on the porch light before going to bed. No questions, no big speeches, just space. Real space. It wasn't a miracle fix. He still flinched at doors opening too fast, still checked behind himself twice before entering a room. But for the first time in a long while, he didn't lie awake counting the seconds until morning. And when morning did come, he got up without anyone calling him. Ramona found him out back, tossing a ball for Oscar, using those same quiet signals. A twitch of the fingers. A nod. A quick tap. Oscar moved like he already knew the day's rhythm. She brought out 2 mugs. Coffee for her. Hot cocoa for him. "You trained him good," she said. Javon just shrugged. "Wilbur taught me too, years ago. We ran drills in an old warehouse with busted floors and no heat. That man could turn any stray mutt into a service dog in 2 weeks flat." Javon didn't answer, but his mouth twitched a little, just slightly. Maybe the start of a smile. "You don't have to talk, Javon," she said. "But I'm here when you're ready." He paused. "Why'd you say yes?" Ramona looked up at the sky like she was choosing her words from it. "Because someone gave me a shot when I came back from Afghanistan and couldn't walk into a grocery store without shaking. You deserve that too." He let that sit for a second. Then, "People never listen." She sipped her coffee. "They're listening now." In the days that followed, more information surfaced. Old reports, discarded complaints from Gerald's former co-workers, notes that never made it to the case file. A system full of gaps, until a dog filled one. Judge Cranmore personally requested an internal review of the foster agency's vetting process. 2 caseworkers were reassigned. Lynette Bosley was questioned for neglect. Gerald? He was charged with multiple counts: child endangerment, emotional abuse, and 1 count of perjury. The story made local news. But it wasn't Javon's face on TV. It was Oscar's. A headline under the evening segment read, "Therapy Dog Helps Expose Abuse Case. Boy's Silent Signals Lead to Breakthrough." They got it wrong, of course. It wasn't just a dog. It was a child who knew a language that didn't rely on shouting. A child who had waited for someone, anyone, to take his quiet seriously. Back at Ramona's house, things weren't perfect. He still didn't say much at school, still flinched when people raised their voices. But he smiled more. 8 full meals, slept through the night, and one Friday afternoon he pulled out a worn notebook and started writing. At the top of the page he wrote, "How to Train Dogs Who Listen Without Words." Ramona saw the title but didn't say anything. She didn't have to. And when Judge Cranmore retired later that year, he kept 1 file from his entire career. Not a murder case, not a fraud scheme, but Javon's. He kept it to remind himself that justice doesn't always come from the loudest voices. Sometimes it comes from those who were quiet too long. So if there's one thing to take from Javon's story, it's this. When someone goes quiet, don't assume they have nothing to say. Maybe they're just waiting for the right kind of listener. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Because sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones we almost missed.
It was late afternoon, and the sun painted golden streaks across the trees in Fairview Park. The place buzzed with life, kids racing around the swings, joggers gliding along the trails, and couples sharing quiet conversations on benches. Jamir, a 16-year-old high school junior, walked along the gravel path with his backpack slung over one shoulder. He wasn't there to enjoy the park. It was just a shortcut on his way to pick up groceries for his mom. Halfway through the park, something unusual caught his attention. On a weathered wooden bench near the playground sat a small tan leather purse. It looked out of place, almost abandoned. Jamir paused. His instincts told him to keep walking. It wasn't his business. But curiosity, or maybe his sense of right and wrong, got the better of him. Looking around, he saw no one who seemed to be searching for anything. Slowly, he approached the bench and picked up the purse. It was light but sturdy, with a few scuffs on the corners. His heart beat a little faster as he unzipped the main compartment. Inside, he found a wallet, a set of keys, and a folded receipt. A driver's license peeked out of the wallet. The photo showed a middle-aged woman with soft blonde hair and kind eyes. Linda Carson. He read her name and address, then glanced again around the park. Still, no one seemed to notice or care about the purse. He sighed. This wasn't what he planned for his day, but he couldn't leave it there. Shoving the purse into his backpack, Jamir resolved to find its owner. The walk home felt heavier than usual, as if the purse carried more than just its contents. Jamir sat at the small dining table in his family's kitchen, the purse resting in front of him. His younger sister, Tasha, peered at it with wide eyes, her curiosity barely contained. "Did you find that? Is it full of money?" she asked, leaning closer. Jamir shook his head, pulling out the wallet to show her. "No, it belongs to someone. Linda Carson. Look, her ID's right here." Tasha wrinkled her nose. "So, what are you going to do with it?" "Return it," he said firmly, though the words felt heavier than he expected. It wasn't as simple as it sounded. His mum, wiping her hands on a dish towel after her shift, glanced over. "You're doing the right thing, Jamir. But be careful, okay? Not everyone trusts folks knocking on their door, especially not strangers." Jamir nodded. He knew what she meant, even if she didn't say it outright. But something in him couldn't let it go. Linda Carson had to be worried sick about losing her purse, especially with her ID and keys inside. The next morning, after double-checking the address, Jamir hopped on his bike. He pedaled through the neighborhood, the autumn air crisp against his face. As he rode, his nerves started to build. What if she didn't believe him? What if she thought he'd stolen it? The thought made him hesitate for a moment, but he pushed forward. He had made up his mind. When he reached Linda Carson's house, a modest brick home with a porch swing swaying gently in the breeze, he took a deep breath. Standing there with the purse in hand, he rang the doorbell and waited. The sound of hurried footsteps approached, and the door swung open to reveal Linda herself. Her expression shifted instantly, from suspicion to relief, and finally to gratitude. "Oh my goodness," she said, her voice trembling. "You have no idea how worried I've been." Jamir held out the purse. "I found it at the park. I figured you'd want it back." Linda took it from him, her hands shaking slightly. She opened it, checking the contents, then looked up at him with watery eyes. "Everything's here. You didn't take anything?" Jamir shook his head. "No, ma'am. I just wanted to make sure it got back to you." For a moment, Linda just stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled, a genuine warm smile that made Jamir feel lighter. "Thank you," she said softly. "Thank you so much." Linda stepped aside, gesturing for Jamir to come in. "Please, at least let me get you something to drink. You've gone out of your way to do this." Jamir hesitated, glancing at his bike parked by the sidewalk. "I'm okay, really. I just wanted to make sure you got it back." But Linda was insistent. "I won't take no for an answer. Just a moment of your time." Reluctantly, Jamir followed her inside. The house was cozy, filled with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and hints of lavender. Linda motioned for him to sit at the small kitchen table, and he did so awkwardly, unsure where to place his hands. She returned with a glass of lemonade and a small plate of cookies. "Here," she said, setting them in front of him. "It's the least I can do." As Jamir sipped the lemonade, Linda sat across from him, her eyes still scanning the purse in disbelief. "I was convinced it was gone forever. My whole life is in here. My ID, my cards, even a picture of my husband." She hesitated, her gaze lingering on the photo as her voice softened. "He passed away a few years ago. I keep his picture with me everywhere I go. When I realized the purse was missing." Her words trailed off, and she pressed her lips together to stop them from trembling. Jamir shifted in his seat, uncomfortable yet empathetic. "I'm sorry about your husband," he said quietly. Linda smiled faintly, brushing a tear from the corner of her eye. "You've done more than you know, Jamir. I want to give you something for your trouble." She reached into the purse and pulled out a crisp $20 bill. Jamir's hands shot up in protest. "No, Mom, I can't take that. I didn't do it for money." "But you deserve it," she insisted. Jamir shook his head firmly. "My mom always says we should do the right thing, no matter what. I wanted to help." Linda studied him for a long moment, her expression shifting to one of quiet admiration. "Well," she said, tucking the bill back into her purse, "then maybe there's another way I can help you." Jamir blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Linda didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful look crossing her face. Linda tilted her head, studying Jamir as if trying to piece together a puzzle. "Tell me, Jamir, do you live around here?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied. "Just a few blocks over." She nodded, tapping her fingers lightly on the table. "And what about school? What grade are you in?" "I'm a junior at Riverdale High," he said. "It's okay, I guess. I've been thinking about college, but, well, it's not easy." Linda's brows lifted. "College? That's wonderful. What do you want to study?" Jamir hesitated, his fingers tracing the edge of the glass in front of him. "Engineering. I like building things, figuring out how stuff works. But my mum's already working 2 jobs and college is expensive." The room fell silent for a moment. Linda's expression softened, and a small smile played at the corners of her lips. "You remind me of my son," she said quietly. "Your son?" She nodded, her gaze drifting toward a framed photo on the mantel in the living room. Jamir followed her eyes to see a picture of a young man in a cap and gown. "His name was Kyle," Linda explained. "He passed away in a car accident 5 years ago. He was bright, just like you. Always had big dreams. He wanted to be an architect." Jamir shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unsure how to respond. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Linda smiled gently, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Thank you. You know, when you lose someone like that, it changes how you see the world. I try to honor Kyle by helping people when I can. And you, Jamir, you've shown me there's still so much good in this world." Jamir felt his cheeks flush, embarrassed by the praise. "I just did what anyone should do," he muttered. "No, not everyone would have," Linda said firmly. "It's rare to meet someone who chooses kindness when they don't have to. That's why I want to help you. I have some friends in the community, people who care about education, who might be able to make your dream of college a little closer to reality." Jamir blinked in surprise. "You don't have to do that. I mean, you don't even know me." "I know enough," Linda said with a smile. "And besides, it's not about what I have to do. It's about what I want to do." For the first time, Jamir allowed himself to imagine a future where college wasn't just a distant hope, but a real possibility. The next day, Linda set her plan into motion. She spent the morning calling friends, former colleagues, and members of the local community groups she was part of. Linda had always been active in Dayton's civic programs, but now she had a personal mission, helping Jamir get closer to his dreams. Her first call was to Mr. Reynolds, the director of a local non-profit that provided scholarships for underprivileged youth. As soon as Linda explained Jamir's story, Mr. Reynolds was intrigued. "A young man with that kind of integrity deserves a chance," he said. "Have him stop by our office next week, and we'll see what we can do." Next, she contacted her neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, a retired teacher who ran a tutoring program. "If he's aiming for engineering, he'll need strong math and science skills," Mrs. Henderson said. "I'd be happy to work with him." By the end of the day, Linda had lined up several opportunities for Jamir, scholarship applications, free tutoring, and even a summer internship with a local architect. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so inspired. Meanwhile, Jamir had no idea what was unfolding behind the scenes. He spent his weekend helping his mum clean the house and playing video games with Tasha, trying not to think too much about Linda's promise. Part of him didn't want to get his hopes up. When Linda called on Monday evening, her voice was bright with excitement. "Jamir, can you stop by my house tomorrow? I've got some people I'd like you to meet." Curious and a little nervous, Jamir agreed. The next afternoon, he found himself sitting in Linda's living room, surrounded by people he didn't know, but who all seemed eager to support him. "Jamir, this is Mr. Reynolds," Linda said, introducing the man sitting to her left. "He runs a scholarship program and wants to help you with your college applications." Mr. Reynolds extended a hand, his smile warm and encouraging. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Jamir. From what Linda's told me, you've got a bright future ahead of you. Let's make sure you have the tools to reach it." Jamir's mouth fell open slightly. He shook Mr. Reynolds' hand, feeling a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "Thank you, sir," he said, his voice quiet but earnest. Linda gestured to another woman who beamed at Jamir. "And this is Mrs. Henderson. She's a retired teacher and an expert in math and science." Mrs. Henderson leaned forward. "Linda tells me you're interested in engineering. If you're willing, I'd love to help you sharpen your skills and prepare for college-level work." Jamir could barely process everything. This is amazing," he said, looking at Linda. "I don't even know what to say." "Say yes," Linda said simply. Over the next few weeks, Jamir's life took a remarkable turn. After school, he spent hours at Mrs. Henderson's dining table, poring over math problems and engineering concepts he'd only dreamed of understanding. Mrs. Henderson had a way of making even the hardest problems seem approachable, and Jamir found himself gaining confidence with each session. At the same time, Linda accompanied him to meetings at Mr. Reynolds' office. Together they worked on scholarship applications, crafting essays that highlighted Jamir's dedication and his dreams of becoming an engineer. For the first time, Jamir felt like the future wasn't just a distant idea. It was something he could reach out and touch. One day, Linda invited Jamir and his mum to dinner. Sitting at her kitchen table, Linda explained the progress Jamir was making. "Your son is incredible," Linda said, looking at Jamir's mum. "He's smart, kind, and determined. I have no doubt he's going to do great things." Jamir's mum, clearly moved, wiped a tear from her eye. "I always knew he had it in him," she said softly. "But it's hard, you know. Raising kids alone, working all the time. Sometimes it feels like you can't give them everything they deserve." Linda reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You've done an amazing job. Jamir is who he is because of you. I'm just helping a little along the way." Weeks turned into months, and Jamir's hard work began to pay off. One afternoon, he received a letter in the mail. It was from one of the scholarship programs Mr. Reynolds had helped him apply to. With trembling hands, he tore open the envelope and scanned the first few lines. "We are pleased to inform you." Jamir's breath caught in his throat. He read it again, then again, just to be sure. He'd been awarded a full scholarship to study engineering at Ohio State University. He ran to his mum, waving the letter in the air. "Mom! Mom! I got it!" His mum embraced him tightly, her laughter and tears mingling in a way that only a parent's pride can produce. That evening, Jamir made a point to visit Linda. He held the letter up triumphantly as she opened the door. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Linda's eyes sparkled as she hugged him. "No, Jamir. You earned this. All I did was help open the door. You're the one who walked through it." Jamir's story didn't just end with his scholarship. It became a source of inspiration for the entire community. Linda couldn't help but share his journey with her friends and neighbors, emphasizing how one act of honesty had set everything in motion. At a local town hall meeting, Linda recounted the story of Jamir returning her purse and how it had led to this incredible transformation. "It's not just about what Jamir did for me," she said to the small crowd. "It's about what we can do for each other when we choose kindness over doubt and action over indifference." Her words resonated with the audience. People began reaching out to Linda and Jamir, offering support in various forms. Some donated to the scholarship fund. Others volunteered to mentor students in the area. Even local businesses joined in, creating internships and part-time jobs for teens like Jamir who wanted to build a brighter future. Jamir, for his part, embraced the attention with humility. He often spoke at community events, sharing his story and encouraging other young people to believe in themselves. "It's not about where you start," he would say, standing tall in front of a crowd. "It's about what you're willing to do to get where you want to go, and the people who help you along the way." Linda, too, found a renewed sense of purpose. Helping Jamir had filled a void she hadn't realized was there. It was as though, in giving to someone else, she had found a way to heal her own wounds. One spring afternoon, as Jamir prepared to leave for his first semester at Ohio State, he stopped by Linda's house one last time. She greeted him with a tight hug and a care package filled with snacks, notebooks, and a framed photo of the two of them standing on her porch the day he got his scholarship letter. "Thank you, Ms. Carson," he said sincerely, "for everything." "No," Linda replied, her voice soft but firm. "Thank you, Jamir. You reminded me that the world is full of good people, and that we all have the power to make it a little brighter." As Jamir walked away, Linda watched him with a smile, knowing she had played a small part in shaping the incredible journey ahead of him. And as he disappeared down the road, she couldn't help but feel that the best stories in life weren't just about what happened, but about the doors they opened for what could happen next. Jamir's story is a testament to the power of kindness and integrity. A simple decision to return a lost purse not only changed the course of his life, but also sparked a chain reaction that inspired an entire community. It's a reminder that the smallest actions can have the biggest impacts, and that when we choose to help one another, we all rise together. He thought he was just doing the right thing, but when a police car showed up at his door hours later, 13-year-old Jason's life changed forever in ways he never imagined. The sun hung low over the quiet streets of Camden, New Jersey, casting long shadows as schoolchildren shuffled home. Jason, a bright-eyed 13-year-old, was taking his usual route down Franklin Avenue. His backpack bounced with every step, the loose strap flapping against his side. He had just finished an intense math quiz and was mentally replaying the problems he had skipped when something caught his eye. A wallet lying on the sidewalk near a cracked curb. Jason froze mid-step, glancing around to see if anyone was nearby. The street was mostly empty, save for a neighbor's barking dog behind a chain-link fence. Cautiously, he bent down and picked up the worn leather wallet, its edges scuffed with age. He flipped it open. Inside was a driver's license, a few crisp $20 bills, and some scattered cards. The license belonged to a woman named Denise Harper, and judging by the address, she lived just a few blocks away. Jason thought for a moment. It would have been easy to pocket the cash. No one was watching after all. But his mother's voice rang in his ears. "Integrity is what you do when no one's looking." Without a second thought, he zipped the wallet into his backpack and made his way to the address on the ID. Denise's house was a modest brick home with a faded blue door. Jason hesitated as he climbed the porch steps, suddenly nervous. What if she thought he had stolen it? His palms felt clammy as he knocked. A few seconds later, the door opened, and a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a messy bun peered out. "Yes?" she asked, her expression curious. Jason fumbled with his words. "Hi, I found this wallet on the sidewalk, and I think it's yours." He pulled it out of his bag and held it out to her. Denise's eyes widened in surprise. "Oh my goodness, that's mine. I didn't even realize I dropped it," she said, taking the wallet with both hands. Her relief was palpable. "Thank you so much, young man. You don't know how much trouble you just saved me." Jason shrugged, trying to play it cool, but the hint of a smile tugged at his lips. "It's no problem," he said, stepping back toward the porch steps. "I just thought it was the right thing to do." As he turned to leave, Denise called after him. "Wait, what's your name?" "Jason," he replied, pausing mid-step. "Well, Jason, you've got a good heart. I owe you one." Jason nodded, muttered a shy, "Thanks," and jogged off, his sneakers scuffing against the pavement. As he disappeared down the street, Denise stood in the doorway, clutching her wallet and smiling to herself. Little did Jason know that small moment of kindness was about to take a turn he couldn't have anticipated. Later that evening, Jason sat at the kitchen table, hunched over his homework, while the aroma of baked chicken wafted through the air. His mum, Gloria, moved around the small but cozy kitchen, humming a tune as she prepared dinner. Jason's younger sister, Tasha, played with her dolls on the living room rug, her laughter occasionally breaking the quiet. It was shaping up to be an ordinary evening until the sound of tires crunching on gravel broke the rhythm of the household. Jason glanced up as faint red and blue lights flashed against the kitchen window. "Mom," he called cautiously. Gloria frowned, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She moved to the window, peeking through the curtains. "It's a police car," she said, her voice laced with confusion. Jason's stomach dropped. He couldn't think of anything he'd done wrong, but the sight of the patrol car unsettled him. Before anyone could speculate further, there was a knock at the door. Firm, but not aggressive. Gloria exchanged a quick glance with Jason before heading to answer it. Jason trailed behind her, his heart thudding loudly in his chest. Standing on the porch was a tall man in a crisp police uniform. His face was stern, but his eyes carried a glimmer of something that wasn't quite seriousness. "Good evening, ma'am," the officer said politely. "Is Jason home?" Jason's breath caught in his throat. Gloria instinctively stepped protectively in front of him. "What's this about, officer?" The man cleared his throat, glancing briefly at Jason. "We received a report about a wallet that was returned earlier today. I'd like to ask Jason a few questions." Jason stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly. "Yes, sir. I gave the wallet back. I found it on the sidewalk." The officer squinted, leaning down slightly as if scrutinizing Jason's face. "And you're sure you didn't take anything out of it before returning it?" Jason's jaw dropped. "What? No, I didn't take anything." Gloria's tone turned sharp. "Now wait just a minute. My son did the right thing, and you're here accusing him of stealing?" Before the tension could escalate further, the officer's stern expression broke into a wide grin. "Relax, ma'am," he said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. "I'm just messing with him." Jason blinked in confusion. "What?" At that moment, Denise Harper stepped out from behind the officer, laughing. "Jason, I'm so sorry for scaring you," she said, her voice full of warmth. "This is my son, Chris. He's a police officer, and we thought it'd be fun to give you a little surprise for being such a good kid." Jason stared at them, his confusion slowly giving way to relief and then disbelief. "Wait, this was a joke?" Chris chuckled, reaching out to shake Jason's hand. "Not just a joke, kid. I wanted to personally thank you for doing the right thing. You've got more integrity than a lot of adults I've met." Denise stepped forward, placing a hand on Jason's shoulder. "I'm serious, Jason. What you did today meant a lot to me. People don't always go out of their way to return something like that. You deserve to be celebrated." Jason felt the tension leave his body as a small smile crept onto his face. I didn't think it was a big deal," he admitted. "Well, it was," Denise said firmly. "And I don't forget people who do good things. You'll see." Chris gave Jason a playful salute before stepping back toward the patrol car. Denise waved goodbye, promising to see him again soon. As the car pulled away, Jason turned to his mum, who was still trying to process what had just happened. "Well," Gloria said, shaking her head with a wry smile. "That's one way to say thank you." Jason chuckled nervously, his earlier fear fading into a strange mix of pride and amusement. Little did he know this was just the beginning of a life-changing friendship. The next morning, Jason woke up feeling a mix of embarrassment and curiosity about the events of the previous evening. As he walked to school, his thoughts kept drifting back to Denise and Officer Chris. It was strange, yet oddly comforting, how they had gone out of their way to acknowledge something he thought was just the right thing to do. By the time Jason got home that afternoon, he had almost forgotten about it, until there was another knock at the door. This time, it was Denise herself, holding a small gift bag. "Hi, Jason," she greeted him warmly. "I wanted to stop by and thank you again, properly this time." Jason hesitated before opening the screen door. "You didn't have to do that, Ms. Harper." Denise chuckled. "I wanted to. Besides, I owe you an apology for scaring you like that last night. Chris gets his sense of humor from me, unfortunately." She handed him the bag. Jason peeked inside to find a gift card to his favorite sneaker store and a handwritten note. The gesture took him by surprise. "Wow," "Thank you," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "Don't mention it," Denise said. "But you know, I wasn't kidding when I said I don't forget people who do good things. I'd love to get to know you better, Jason. You remind me of my son when he was your age, always doing the right thing, even when it's not easy." Jason didn't quite know how to respond. He glanced over his shoulder at his mum, who had come to the door and was now watching the interaction with a cautious but intrigued expression. Gloria stepped forward, her tone polite but measured. "That's very kind of you, Miss Harper. What exactly do you have in mind?" "Well," Denise began, "Jason mentioned he likes science. My niece works at the local community college, and I think he'd love their summer STEM program. I could help get him in, if he's interested." Jason's eyes widened. "Really? That would be amazing." Gloria studied Denise for a moment, then looked at her son. Jason's enthusiasm was hard to ignore. Finally, she smiled. "That's very generous of you. We'd love to hear more about it." And just like that, a connection began to form. Over the following weeks, Denise stopped by often, always bringing something small, cookies, a book, or even just a kind word. She seemed genuinely invested in Jason's future, and slowly, Gloria's initial wariness faded. Jason soon found himself spending more time with Denise, visiting her home, and even meeting some of her extended family. Denise wasn't just a kind neighbor, she became a mentor. She encouraged Jason to dream bigger, helping him see possibilities he hadn't considered before. One day, while they were sitting on her porch, Denise asked Jason, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" Jason thought for a moment. "I want to be an engineer. I like building things, and my teacher says I'm good at math." Denise nodded, a thoughtful smile spreading across her face. "That's a great goal, Jason. And you know what? You're going to make it. I'll do everything I can to help you get there." Her words weren't just empty promises. Denise connected Jason with a local robotics club, helped him apply for scholarships, and even introduced him to people in her own network who could guide him. For Jason, it wasn't just about the opportunities. It was about the belief Denise had in him. It was the kind of belief that fueled his confidence and made him feel like he could accomplish anything. But their bond wasn't one-sided. Denise often shared stories of her own struggles, and Jason found himself becoming a source of encouragement for her as well. He reminded her of the power of simple acts of kindness and how they could ripple into something much bigger. Their friendship became a cornerstone in both their lives, and the once unlikely pair soon felt more like family. Over the next few months, Jason's relationship with Denise deepened in ways he never expected. She wasn't just a friendly neighbor anymore. She became a mentor, a guide, and a consistent presence in his life. Jason found himself spending more time at Denise's house, learning from her and her extended circle of friends and family. One day, Denise invited Jason and Gloria to a small community event she was hosting at a local library in Camden. The event was focused on mentorship and opportunities for young people. Jason wasn't sure what to expect, but as they entered the library's event space, he was amazed by the energy in the room. Tables were set up with information on various programs, everything from scholarships to internships, and local professionals were there to answer questions. "Jason," Denise said, pulling him aside, "I want you to meet someone." She led him to a man in his early 30s who was tinkering with a miniature robot at one of the booths. "This is Dr. Ellis," she explained. "He's an engineer at one of the top firms in Philadelphia, and he used to mentor kids just like you." Jason's eyes lit up. He and Dr. Ellis spent the next hour talking about robotics, coding, and engineering. For the first time, Jason could clearly envision himself in that world. When the event ended, Jason thanked Denise with a hug, a rare gesture for him. "I don't know how to thank you for all of this," he said. "You don't have to," Denise replied with a warm smile. "Just promise me you'll never stop believing in yourself." That promise stayed with Jason, especially during the more challenging moments of his journey. One of those moments came a few weeks later, when Jason entered a robotics competition through the club Denise had helped him join. He was confident in his design, but froze during the presentation, overwhelmed by the crowd and the pressure to perform. Later, Jason sat on the curb outside the venue, staring at the pieces of his robot. Denise found him there, her face filled with concern. "What happened in there?" she asked gently, sitting down beside him. Jason shook his head. I messed up. I couldn't even finish explaining how it works. Everyone else was so much better than me. Denise didn't rush to respond. She let the silence linger for a moment before speaking. Jason, do you know how many times I've failed at things I cared about? More times than I can count. But failure isn't the end. It's just part of the process. Jason looked up at her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. What if I'm not good enough? Denise smiled softly. You're more than good enough. And if you ever forget that, I'll be here to remind you. Her words were enough to rekindle Jason's determination. He decided to rework his presentation for the next competition, this time leaning into the support system Denise had helped him build. The weeks following the competition were a turning point for Jason. With Denise's encouragement and support, he poured himself into refining his robot design and practicing his presentation. She invited Dr. Ellis over for one-on-one coaching sessions, and Jason found himself learning not only about engineering, but also about confidence and preparation. On the day of the next competition, Denise arrived early to pick Jason up. She noticed his hands trembling slightly as he held his robot. Nervous? She asked with a knowing smile. A little, Jason admitted. What if I mess up again? Denise placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You've already done the hard part, Jason. You didn't give up. Whatever happens today, just remember how far you've come. At the competition, Jason stood among a group of bright, ambitious kids, each with their own creations. The energy in the room was electric, but instead of letting it overwhelm him, Jason focused on the advice Denise had given him. He reminded himself that this wasn't just about winning. It was about showing up and doing his best. When it was finally his turn to present, Jason stepped up to the podium, took a deep breath, and began speaking. His voice wavered at first, but as he explained his robot's functionality, he gained confidence. By the time he finished, the audience was clapping enthusiastically. Jason didn't win first place that day, but he walked away with something far more valuable, a newfound belief in himself. On the ride home, Denise couldn't stop smiling. You were incredible out there, Jason, she said. Jason grinned, his earlier doubts replaced by pride. I couldn't have done it without you. As time went on, Jason continued to thrive. With Denise's help, he applied for a prestigious summer program at a university in Philadelphia. The application process was grueling, but Denise guided him through every step, from writing his essay to preparing for the interview. When the acceptance letter finally arrived, Jason ran straight to Denise's house, waving the envelope in the air. I got in, he shouted, breathless with excitement. Denise hugged him tightly, tears of joy welling in her eyes. I knew you would, she said softly. Years passed, and Jason's journey was nothing short of remarkable. He graduated from high school at the top of his class, went on to study engineering at a prestigious university, and eventually landed his dream job at a cutting-edge robotics firm. Throughout it all, Denise remained a constant in his life. She attended his graduations, celebrated his achievements, and reminded him of the values that had brought him this far. Jason often reflected on how much his life had changed because of her kindness and support. One sunny afternoon, Jason returned to Camden to visit Denise. She had recently retired and was spending her days volunteering at the library where she'd first introduced him to Dr. Ellis. Denise, Jason began as they sat on her porch, I don't know where I'd be if I hadn't found your wallet that day. Denise laughed, shaking her head. You'd still be amazing, Jason. All I did was give you a little push. The rest was all you. Jason smiled, but his expression turned serious. I've been thinking. I want to start a scholarship fund for kids in this neighborhood who have big dreams but need a little help to get there. I want to call it the Harper Scholarship in your honor. Denise's eyes filled with tears. Jason, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Jason replied with a grin. That moment encapsulated the beauty of their bond, a connection that had grown from a simple act of kindness into a lifelong friendship that transformed not only Jason's life, but also the lives of others in their community. As the story closed, Jason and Denise stood together, watching children play on the street, dreaming of a brighter future for all of them. Their journey was a testament to the power of compassion, integrity, and the unexpected ways people can change each other's lives.